right, everybody. Welcome to the Choosing Health podcast. I've got Whitney Miller with me on a Zoom call. Whitney, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Kaden?
I'm doing fantastic. Today has actually been incredibly warm. So I
Yes.
worked out earlier this morning, and on my way here, I was like, I think I'm going to roll the windows down. And I for sure definitely did. It was nice.
Yeah, we'll take it. Mid-December in Indiana, rolling windows down. We'll take it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Thank you for coming onto the podcast. Actually,
for having me.
You're the first guest that I've ever had on the podcast,
hey,
yeah,
it's exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And especially because I think I've only had like 5 episodes, so it's still pretty early, but I love being able to talk to different people and get their perspectives on all corners of health. I think that's what this podcast is about. It's meant to share different experiences with people to sort of give them something that they can connect with. And you have a very specific set of circumstances and a story that I think is really interesting. And I think lots of people can really benefit from hearing that and having a conversation with you. So that's kind of where I want to go with everything. And I think we'll just kind of dive in from the start. So go ahead and give us a brief background of yourself. Where are you from? How did things get started that kind of landed you where you are right now?
Sure. Well, I am a east side of Indianapolis person. I grew up in Indianapolis my whole life, and I have always been an athlete. So I was a competitive swimmer from the time I was 6 until through college. I swam at University of Indianapolis. And I loved swimming. I loved what it taught me, the dedication, the perseverance, the really fire and grit that it taught me. And it definitely made me who I am today. But when I got done with college, I graduated with a bachelor's in elementary education and went into teaching. And I, had been exercising, swimming for 5 hours a day, pretty much for my entire life. And so after you have been doing that for so long, you kind of get finished and it's like, okay, what do I do now? It's like all this time. And so I started running as a way to manage kind of the stress of, this young adult life I was entering into. And at the time, I wasn't super happy in my career. I went into teaching, having a very beautiful, green, sweet ideal of what education was. And I got in and kind of saw things that didn't align with me. And so I was very unhappy in my career, and I was very unhappy just with myself, honestly. And so I used running as a tool to manage anxiety, to manage stress, and to really beat my body to a pulp, honestly. So it was my time to work everything out in my head, but it was also my time to really just like leave everything out there. If you've ever swam laps, that swimming really does that. Like it's a sport that you go into a exercise, or workout, and you get done and it's like, whew, it's all out there. Right. And so I did that similarly with running, but it really turned into a kind of a time to really hate my life, hate myself, hate my circumstances, and use my body as the catalyst to receive all that hatred. And so it really just became a really negative space. And ultimately what happens when, you're doing that is you get injured. We all know that as athletes, when you don't pay attention to all those other pieces too. And so, I became injured, and that's a whole long kind of process and story. But in that space, I ultimately learned how to heal my body, heal my mind, and heal myself, and heal my running. And so once I was able to do that, it brought me to a new career path, and allowed me to find health and life coaching and running coaching. And I opened my own business, Transcend Health and Wellness. And now I am a running health and life coach as well as a strength coach. And I focus on working with runners who really kind of did what I did, really just use their training as a time to, get in all the miles, and maybe they hate their running or they hate their training, but it's a time where they're just following some training plan that they found, not really focused on them as the customized version of that training plan. And then what happens is they get injured. So I really focus on injury prevention with my athletes and running for their bodies. So really, how do we train efficiently and effectively for your body as you, as a human, versus like, here's a training plan you can just find online, and it's kind of made for the overall, general person, which honestly really doesn't exist. So
Yeah.
that's what I do now.
Cool. I love that story, which I think for a lot of people, when passions turn into careers, you sort of have this similar backstory of like, I had an experience that led me into sort of that thing. And for you, it was, having that injury with your running, which was something that you were already passionate about, but then having the injury kind of was that catalyst that pushed you into the thing that you're doing now, where you're like, yeah, this is the deal. This is what I want. I want to do specific programs for people so that they don't get injured and so that they don't have to deal with the things that I dealt with. And I think that's very similar, in PT school, you hear people, the common thing is like, oh, I had an experience, I had an injury, saw a physical therapist, fell in love with it, and that pushed me towards my career path. So that's really cool to hear, how you took something that was maybe really negative in the moment and kind of use that to shape and mold yourself moving forward. So I think for backstory's sake, and we'll eventually get into a little bit more on the Transcend health and wellness side of things. Talk to the listeners a little bit about your injury. What specifically was that?
Sure.
And what did that process look like?
Yeah. So I want to also shed a little bit of light on the mindset piece, because the body part is a big part of it, but the mindset piece is also that other piece of the puzzle for my story. So like I said, super unhappy in my career, super unhappy with myself, with my life, very confused as to, I had spent my whole life from the time I was 6 thinking that teaching was my calling, and teaching children was my calling. And so to come to a realization that that wasn't in alignment for me anymore was very challenging. And so the mindset piece was also a piece of that puzzle that I, with finding coaching, was able to heal myself. But, the injury happened slowly. So it was kind of, I had been training, following these plans that really were not made for my body, and was noticing like, okay, this plan really doesn't fit my body. So very early on in my running career, I guess you would call it, I started writing my own training plans and for myself, and found a lot of success in that, found a lot of PRs, found a lot of just success in my training. And then I would really share them with friends that were runners. And so it was really coaching, runners a long time before I really made it official, per se. But the injury started slow, and just having some chronic hip pain that was more in the back part kind of my hip or upper part of your glute, and thinking, oh, I need to strengthen that, or, oh, like maybe I just need to do more foam rolling, and started doing research on my own, after, a couple years on and off of doing my own research, kind of band-aiding it, and then it coming back. I ended up seeing a sports PT, and that was successful for an amount of time. But then things came back, and like now looking back, there's a lot of pieces that I understand that I didn't understand then. I really wasn't focused on strength training the way that I am today in my, my training world. There's a lot of recovery that I wasn't doing. So there's a lot of things, a lot of pieces, right, that like didn't fall into place for me. And I wasn't educated on them, honestly, either. And so I was doing a lot of my own research, and you know how that can be, like, especially when you're passionate, you kind of go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So I was becoming like obsessed with this inability to do what I want to do physically. And so ultimately, I just had so much pain that it was like, okay, I've gotten to a point in physical therapy where like I'm at this plateau. Like, what's the next step? And so, as many, and I'm going to kind of watch like how PC I want to be, but as many PTs that are not in this kind of functional world that now I am a part of, he recommended I see a sports medicine specialist. Well, long story short, that sports medicine specialist, uncovered that I had a tear in my right labrum in my hip. After doing research, find out that's very common to a lot of people. It's just that a lot of people don't push themselves enough athletic wise to even know that that's happening, or to even have a sensation of pain. And so I was told I needed surgery. At the time, it was devastating. I went into a pretty bad depression. Being an athlete and being my identity, it was really, really just, for lack of better words, a mind fuck. About how can I be this athlete? How can I continue to be myself if I'm going to have surgery? And so there was a piece of me that knew like it wasn't aligned for me, but you're being told by all these specialists, all these people, like, this is the right thing to do. Like, this is what we're seeing. This is what you should do. This is da, da, da. And so you can easily get pulled into that, especially if you're unwilling to listen to that intuition and that gut wisdom. And that's where that mind piece came in. And I'm so blessed that I had experienced, my coaching certification at that point. And I had a coach of my own that was really helpful in that understanding of my own belief about this. Something's not right about this. Like, this doesn't feel aligned for me. And so at that time, I was really fortunate to get connected with a functional movement PT. And it was a connection that was meant to be for business to business referral. But in that, conversation, my injury came up, and he was very bold and said, I have a couple questions. He asked me a couple questions, and he said, I'm just going to tell you, I don't think you need surgery. And at that point, I was looking for any out, I was like, this isn't aligned. I don't want to do this, but I feel like I should, so, and I started working with him and learned about the world of mobility and functional movement, and it changed my life, and it gave me my running back. And now I feel extremely passionate about sharing what I know that changed my life, changed my running, changed how I feel in my body on a daily, not just when I run or when I exercise, but how I feel when I wake up. I have to share that with people. So that's a little bit about the injury piece, but definitely an up and down of, that fight between listening to professionals, and I put that in quotes, because they are. And also, I think that as individuals, sometimes we get robbed of our intuition and of our wisdom, because we put it in the hands of other people. So kind of taking that back and saying, okay, like, I've got time, let's try this and let's see. And here I am on the other side with, of course, like, I have some occasional flare-ups, if I do some things, but all totally manageable, totally easy to handle with all the mobility tools I have. And, and so I can do everything I want to do in the running world. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. And it almost makes you wonder too, sometimes, how many other runners or other athletes of different specialties and stuff, have these issues and don't think to get multiple opinions from different viewpoints.
Sure.
You went the pretty standard route of, okay, I'm going to go to physical therapy. Physical therapy didn't work, so the referral pattern happens and you go to the orthopedic specialist, and you end
Yeah.
up in the revolving door of the healthcare system. And for better or for worse, I think in some instances it's built around, how can we make some money? And surgeries are an easy money maker, and especially for
Sure.
something like a labrum. And what a lot of people who might not have had the blessing of being able to either listen to their intuition or end up in a B2B relationship with someone who happens to have the solution to your problem that actually worked.
Mm.
People end up having things like labral surgery or rotator cuff surgery, and it puts them at a severe disadvantage long term for the rest of their life, when it was probably something they could have managed on their own.
Yeah.
But I think, like you mentioned earlier, that mindset piece is huge. If you're constantly being fed the negatives and you aren't
Mhm.
really able to look at more of the positive, can I push through this? Can I figure out different ways to heal? Then I think that makes that a lot more difficult for people. And then you end up in situations where it's like, well, I had a hip replacement when I was 35 and I probably didn't need to,
Sure, sure.
and so that,
And I was definitely fed that, like, okay, so need this surgery now, and probably by the time you're 65, you'll need a hip replacement. And it's like, whoa, like time out.
yeah,
Like I've been an athlete my entire life. There's like, and also too, like I wasn't a super intense as far as like load on your body. Swimming is pretty I don't want to say easy on your body, but it's more tender on your body than say basketball or football or
mm-hmm,
baseball or, something like that. And to be an athlete who did that my whole life, it didn't make sense to me. And I think that's right. A lot of people kind of have that inkling, but they don't have either the support system in place to question what's happening,
mm-hmm.
or they don't have the maybe the energy or the effort to say, okay, I'm going to get a second opinion, or I'm going to talk to somebody else, or do my own research, things like that.
Yeah. Can you talk about how the things you learned as far as functional movement is concerned, what are some of the big takeaways that you learned from implementing functional training into your running training to sort of enhance
Sure.
your ability to run? And how does that play into what you do with your running coaching and your former running group and all of those things related to that?
Yeah, great questions. I think the number one thing is making mobility a part of your workout.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time in the early part of learning about mobility that it was like, oh God, I got to do my mobility,
Mm-hmm.
like it being a pain in the ass versus this is part of my workout. When I step into that band, when I get on that ball, I am doing exercise. Like I
Yeah.
am, working out, quote. And so really working on that mindset, retraining and rewiring that mind to understand that, okay, the second I start mobility, I'm starting my workout, my exercise for that day. So I think that's the number one thing, because with endurance athletes, particularly, we love like to get in there, get out, it to be fast, hard, like balls to the wall, and then we're done, right? So we
Yeah.
don't love to warm up, we don't love to cool down. We just love the like intense, like,
Do it.
yes.
Yeah.
So I think, rewiring that thought of, okay, mobility is a piece of your workout. And then as far as, how I take that takeaway into my coaching with runners is that that's a part of my coaching. So when runners come to me, whether or not they have pain or injury or, whatever, that's a piece of my coaching with them. So it's mindset, it's training plan, and it's mobility. And so those are the three things that we put into practice as coach and client, because without that mobility piece, ultimately, if people, and I'll say in strength training, that's another conversation, but as people increase their miles, if they're not warming up and cooling down, which that's kind of the trend I see with my runners, we get to a point where, oh, I'm having pain, or oh, this hurts, or oh, like I can't run because da da da. And so then it's like I'm troubleshooting reactively versus proactively. So I like to implement that at the get-go so that it's proactive for those athletes, and really lay that foundation for them so that as they're running, they know how to troubleshoot. They're not getting their mind caught in this, oh my gosh, my knee hurts and I'm not going to be able to run my race, or my knee hurts and I'm not going to be able to run my 10-mile run this weekend. So really, it kind of, for me, kills, two birds with one stone, is that mindset piece of like not playing that fear factor of I'm not going to be able to train the way I want to, but also that body piece of taking care of the body from the foundation up versus doing it after the fact and then playing catch up.
Yeah, that I love. It's almost like, and runners are probably the best analogy to put with this topic, but it's almost like you got to treat your body like a car. And especially with endurance athletes, I mean, you're talking high mileage driving.
Yeah.
We're putting lots of long-term stress on the body. And if you're not doing your regular oil changes, you're not changing the air filters, which in this analogy is the mobility stuff, the stretching, the cool down, all that stuff, then it's a lot more likely that your body's going to break down, or you're going to have some issues a lot sooner than you probably would have if you had been taking care of it and doing that maintenance ahead of time. I think preventative care is an area that needs to grow in physical therapy. From my perspective, I think a lot of the time, the model is built off of, okay, I found an injured person, I'm going to make them better and then send them home just to be the same as they were before. When in reality, we need to try to be finding people and being like, okay, you need to do this stuff before you get hurt. Because if you can figure out how to manage that on your own, you empower people to take so much more ownership of themselves.
Yeah. And I think that's the key word, empowering, people. That is what I do in a coaching space, but empowering people not only in that mindset piece, but also the training piece. Is, like I said, so many people go outside of themselves to find a training plan online or, whatever. And what I like to do with people is create a training plan with them, so that it is evergreen, always changing, but it's always their thoughts being incorporated, because it empowers them to understand that they know their body the best. And so I can sit here and I can say, okay, here's a framework, but then I always say, how did that go? What did you like? How can we shift? How can we elevate this so that it meets you where you're at? And so I think that's a piece too, is just empowering people to say, I know what my body needs. And if I don't know, I can learn how. I can learn how to incorporate that and understand that into my training. And so I think you hit the nail on the head with that one for sure.
Yeah. What are some specific points of contact as far as the strength training that you have seen in the runners that you've worked with so far? What are some specific movement patterns or areas of the body that you really like to hit on to ensure that they're doing that proper maintenance for themselves based on the sport specifically?
Sure. Yeah. Strength training, I will tell you, because I am the prime person to use as an example. Runners don't strength train, period. A lot of them. And I think that theme is changing in the running world, but it's very slow to change. as a very early beginner runner, I thought strength training was clamshells and banded, bridges and things like that, which that can be part of it. But, you know, having them really understand kind of a core set of a plan for a strength training workout versus just like, okay, do strength training for an hour. It really helps. So I actually have a program that's coming out in January called Transcend Strength for Runners. And so that takes 4 key components that I like to use in strength training with my runners. The first piece is mobility, because I think that's such an important piece. Mm-hmm. Then we have lifting, and that's really functional lifting. So, we're talking squats, we're talking push-ups, we're talking deadlifts, we're talking kettlebell swings. So really functional movements that help that hip strength, that core strength that is really used a lot in a runner. And then after lifting, we have endurance strength training. So that's where you kind of add in that, endurance load after that lift. So burpees, hinge ups, push-ups, squats, kind of back-to-back work with very little rest to build that endurance strength, and then a cool down. And my cool down consists of about 10 minutes or so of a yoga based cool down. So I am a yogi and I love yoga, and I think it is such a benefit to runners. Mm-hmm. And so I like to incorporate that with my strength training, just some simple poses to help cool down the body and stretch out those muscles after that strength training workout. So I usually like to strength train personally myself and with my athletes for an hour, 2 to 3 times a week. So this is where I may differ from a lot of running coaches. The old story in running is that the more miles, the better. So if you're going to qualify for Boston, or if you're going to, whatever the goal is, it's like run the more miles, 80 miles, 100 miles a week. And for some people that works. From my experience, a lot of people, that is super challenging on the body, on the mind, and on life, right? Like time wise. And so I like to kind of flip it and do more strength training and less miles. And I've seen a really great success with that with my runners, with myself personally, playing with that in my own training. So that's where I kind of like to add that, 3 times into that week of training, just to have that strength be at its optimum. So then running can then be at its optimum as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. And part of that too, I like that you're taking something that's not used often for runners, implementing it to runners to make them better. And I'm sure that there are, some of your clients who noticing like, hey, that 8 miles felt a lot better because I've been strengthening my hips and I can handle that load for longer periods of time. And for me, I start to think about it being almost the opposite for CrossFitters too. A lot of CrossFitters don't like to run.
Yeah.
We look at running and we're just like, no thanks. 1 mile is probably about the longest I ever want to do that. And it kind of goes against what the methodology preaches, which is that you're only as fit as you are competent in all these different skills, and endurance is one of them. We've got people who are now, deadlifting 500 pounds and then turning around and running a 5-minute mile and doing 50 pull-ups in the same day. I mean, that's pretty cool human performance stuff. So I guess my question here is, what advice would you give to any of the CrossFitters that might be listening, as far as like, what is the benefit of running? Like, what can running do for you to improve fitness? Like, why is it important for you to take more time away from your other training and maybe devote a little bit more to your running?
Sure. Yeah, that's a awesome question. So what I love to do with that endurance strength training piece is add running into it in small increments. So I have found, especially for people who may be beginner runners or people who are not too hot on running, is to add it in small increments where it seems manageable, but your body is already under load from doing all that endurance work, that you're running kind of under that tension.
Mhm.
So I like to implement it in, quarter mile intervals or half mile intervals, or, a multiple interval kind of workout mixed with strength training. I find that creates the most, I think it creates, honestly, the most mental success, because people are like, holy cow, I just did all this, strength training before, and now I just ran X, Y, and Z. And it also creates like that physical part where your body,
Mhm.
like I said, is under that load, and then it's able to perform. So I think it's a win-win situation. And that's kind of where I would recommend people start as CrossFitters, who maybe don't love running, or for anybody who's not, too keen on running.
Mhm.
Don't start out and say, hey, I'm going to run 3 miles. Start out with those small intervals, and, pick those levels of effort and see, how can you match them into, some burpees, some squats, some kettlebell swings, and then run a quarter mile, and maybe do that 4 times and
Mhm.
see how does that work for your body. And obviously everybody's going to be different, but that's what I found pretty successful with my runners, myself as well, is especially on a day where maybe, because even though I love running, there are some days where I don't want to run 5 miles,
Mhm.
if that's on the docket. And sometimes I'll switch it out for something like that to feel more successful and to have that mindset, kind of pump, versus running 5 miles and thinking, wow, that really sucked, and maybe
Mhm.
that's just because my body didn't need that day. So kind of playing with that as well.
Cool. I want to ask a little. So we've talked a lot about the running side of things, but Transcend Health and Wellness has another aspect to it, and it's the health coaching, the health and life coaching. I'm not as familiar with that kind of stuff, so could you enlighten me on what that service looks like, and what do you do for people
Sure.
who are seeking that out?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, health and life coaching, I think, is becoming more and more, something that's becoming a little more familiar to people. Um, and in my business, the clients that I tend to attract are more on that life coaching space. So I'm going to talk a lot to that. And that's not to say that health coaching clients don't come my way. It's just that typically they're more in that life space. So, health and life coaching is talking with somebody and kind of helping them gain clarity on a challenge they're faced with, whether it is in the health space or the life space. So, first, it's gaining that clarity about what really do they want. And that may seem like a very simple question, but you would be amazed at how many people don't really know. They may think they want a new job, but it may be that they really, when it comes down to it, want more time at home with their family.
Mhm.
So, really getting clear on what it is that they want, and then creating a plan that works for them and their life to get to that outcome. So, and having that accountability and support in the space of a coaching space, to allow them to overcome negative mindset, barriers that are in the way, whether it's mental or physical, and then helping them empower themselves so that they can overcome those things, eventually on their own. And so, like I said, a lot of my clients are life coaching clients. They'll come to me maybe because they just feel stuck, like they are not passionate about life. They just are kind of feel like they're going through the motions, and they just need some help figuring out what they're passionate about, what they want in life. Some people will come to me because, like I said, maybe they're interested in changing their careers. Or some people will come to me because they are just unhappy with their personal goals. So they don't have any goals. They want to accomplish goals, but they don't know what they want to do. So, really, when people come to me, they're very confused and overwhelmed. And so, sitting in a coaching space helps gain clarity, and then helps you create a really clear path to get to the outcome that you want, and overcome those barriers that are in the way, whether it, like I said, it's health or life.
Yeah. That's really helpful, I think, for a lot of people, especially when you get in places in your life where you're to the point where things need to change, or you have a lot of stress, and it's easy to get confused and not know what to do next. And so having somebody who's able to come in and help lead you and guide you through those things, that can be a real benefit to lots of people. I think that's a really,
Yeah.
really cool service.
Yeah,
So,
and I love being able to have kind of both the backgrounds, because a lot of my runners will come in as running clients, but
mhm,
really we work on a lot of life coaching stuff,
yeah.
because how you're functioning in your running is probably how you're functioning in your life as well, in some areas or all. And so
Mhm,
really they mirror each other. And so it's really great to be able to pair the two together. And also health coaching, too, to pair it with running and just be able to do a holistic lens on things versus, here's a training plan and let's just talk about the physicality piece of it all.
mhm, yeah. So looking ahead, what are some of your goals moving forward from here? I know you spoke a little bit earlier about the program that you're going to release in
Yeah.
January. Do you have any other big things in the works for maybe, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you want to see yourself progress moving forward from today?
Yeah, so that's a big question, but
Yeah.
I love it. So of course, as an entrepreneur, like we're always like, oh, this is down the road, this down the line. So yeah, I'm super thrilled about Transcend Strength for Runners. I have been working on the program for about a year, so I just can't wait to get it out there. Um, and the reason I created it was just because I was looking for something that had all those pieces, and I was looking and I was looking and I was looking and I couldn't find it. So I thought,
Yeah.
well, I'm just going to create it. So I'm super thrilled about that. And that's the big thing. I also am super thrilled to host my second annual Transcend running retreat, which is a women's running retreat held in the fall in
Mhm.
Nashville, Indiana. And so this year, I was able to host the inaugural one in person. It's a very small, intimate gathering of women, limited to about 8 to 10 women. And so I'm super excited to do that again next year. And it's a trail running retreat. So that's really fun. And it's really great to just connect with other women that are like minded and empower them through running community. So I'm super thrilled about that. As far as personal goes, I have, in the last couple years, kind of coming out of this like injury space I was in, I haven't ran a long race. So I haven't done a marathon or half marathon since 2017. And so I'm really looking forward to this year accomplishing some of my own running goals. I have a birthday run that I'm going to be doing in January that I'm like hesitant to even share it out loud because I still am like, oh, I don't even know if I want to do it, but I'm going to share it. So I am running 35 miles in 24 hours. So I'm turning 35.
Nice.
So I thought I would do something fun and kind of challenging. And so,
Yeah.
so doing that, but just kind of getting back to my running, I've taken a lot of time to, focus on my business, focus on my personal growth, and I'm ready to get back into that running world for myself and see what's possible, especially with everything I've created,
Mhm.
in the last couple of years.
Yep. You've always got to stop and take some time for yourself too. It's
Yeah.
really easy to get caught up in all the growth and all the other fun things that are
Yes.
happening around, and then forget to realize, like, oh yeah, I've got things I want to do for me also. So that's
Yeah.
good that you're pushing for some of those things. 35 miles in 24 hours. Oh my goodness. I don't even think I could dream about running that far. I might run that far in that amount of time if a bear was chasing me nonstop. But my goodness, I might just have to have you coach me for 8 months or something like that
Hey,
before I
there you
choose to do
go.
something like that.
I would love to.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I think we're kind of coming to the close of our talk. I have 3 questions that
Okay.
I'm going to establish today as my base 3 for all
Okay.
guests. So these are kind of on the fly questions. The first one is, what's one book that has impacted you the most?
Oh gosh. Man, like being in the like self-growth, like coaching world, I feel like
Mhm.
there's like 1,000. The one that comes to my mind is The Universe Has Your Back by Gabby Bernstein. That was a huge just mindset shift for me that life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you, and how to really embrace that. So I would say that.
That's a good one. That's cool. What's one healthy habit that you have that improves your life?
Yeah. In this world of injury that I had been in, I was really angry at my body. Like I think we get that as things happen, to our body. And I was waking up every day immediately angry at my body. And so I was lucky to have a friend who's also a coach kind of help me rethink that. And so now, for probably the last 4 years or so, every day when I get up, I literally like roll out of bed, like don't even put my feet on the floor, like roll to the floor.
Oh,
And I do about 2 to 3 minutes of yoga. So just some cat
cool.
cow, some downward facing dog, just some really light, easy poses just to get that spine moving and just get your body, out of that like creaky feeling in the
Mhm.
morning. And it's really changed the way that I've started my day. And it's something that I love to recommend to people because it's easy to do, it's quick. And I really like just the mindset piece of it too, just getting your day started that way.
Yeah, I might have to start trying that. I've been contemplating doing some more yoga and stuff like that, adding that into some of my routines. And I think first thing in the morning, just getting into some of those poses would help a ton.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that. And last one, what is a quote that inspires you?
Yeah. Yes. So there is a quote that I love by Thoreau. And the first part of it, I won't share because it's kind of lengthy, but the second part is live the life you've imagined. And I think that is just it's so pivotal. If
Mhm.
you're sitting every day going, man, like this is not what I thought my life would be like, and in a negative way, it's time to reevaluate, and
Mhm.
how can you shift even one small thing to set you up for success so you can live the life you're imagining, in your mind. And if you don't know what that is, that's where someone obviously like me comes in, but to really, set yourself up for success so you can live that life that you are wanting for yourself inside.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you, Whitney. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
That was a great conversation. How can people find you and reach out to you? What are some things that you want people to know?
Sure. So they can follow me on social media, Facebook and Instagram. I'm more active on Instagram, but it's transcend.health.and.wellness. And that's a really good place just to see all the things I'm doing and, keep up with me. And then my website is transcendhealthandwellness.com and all of the goodness there too. So, but I would say social media is the best place to
Okay.
connect with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for listening to our conversation. I will link all of that information down in the bottom of the description for you to click on if you want to go follow Whitney, read about her on her website. She's got lots of cool information for you as far as the specifics in the running coaching, the health and life coaching, and all of that stuff that we listened to today. So thank you guys for listening, and I will catch you in the next one.